This is SG2 Perspectives, a conversation with SG2 experts and industry thought leaders about the biggest trends in healthcare and what we expect that's going to mean for the future of healthcare delivery.
When you talk about trying to tease out, is this going to replace people? Is the end game workforce reduction? It's just way too early. And all of the forecasts were so overemphasized that aspect of it because the distribution of intelligence does not translate to capabilities. There's all of these different things that are just really hard engineering problems to bolt on top of this intelligence to make it functional.
Welcome to SG2 Perspectives. I'm your host, Trevor DaRin. Today we are talking AI, but more broadly than health system applications. I asked Sam Fredin from Vizient's AI strategy team and Andrew Rebhan from SG2 to help me discuss how AI is being adopted across industries and to explore if those learnings mirror what we are seeing in health systems. Welcome to SG2 Perspectives. I am your real host, Trevor DaRin. What you just heard was not your host, Trevor DaRin. That was an AI version of my voice. We thought it would be a fun way to jump into this discussion. And Sam, I'm going to go to you first because we're going a little bit broader than just our normal focus on healthcare and clinical and health system applications for AI. Talk to me about the state of AI adoption across all industries, and healthcare can be one of them. But how are big companies, small companies, others using AI today? And is it living up to the hype and hope?
It's not easily answered. As with all things AI, there's a language confusion. And when we say adoption, it can mean a couple different things. And just how I've tried to frame it here at Vizient is we have our people, our platform, and our processes. Have our people adopted it as their own personal assistant? Have we integrated it into our processes to change the way that we work? And have we optimized our platform to allow AI to access and really be leveraged within it? If you think about that across all the companies and the whole industry, it's really uneven adoption that the future is here. It's just unevenly distributed. That's a real thing. The disparity between where CEOs think that their companies are and where employees think that their companies are in that adoption curve is very different. McKinsey just came out with another AI survey. There's endless amounts of them these days, but it's 78% of companies say that they have adopted AI in at least one business function. That could mean anything from their people to their platform to their process. But then at least 80% of them also see no bottom line impact of that yet. It's really uneven at this point. One other quick thing on that too is if you want to see where adoption is high, go to Silicon Valley and start talking to founders and startups, and you'll see what the future of work looks like. Because these AI native companies where from the ground up, their people are using AI because they're so resource constrained. They have to make the most of what they have. Their people are using it. They've built their product integrated with it. They have all of their systems that they're using, integrate AI, and really to maximize their efficiency. As a result, it's kind of crazy to look at some of these early startups and with fewer than 10 people, their companies are valued at multi-billion dollars at this point, tens of billions of dollars like Cursor and Windsurf and things like that.
So, Trev, the only thing I'll add to that, because that was a great overview of what we're seeing, is we're seeing the same parallel within healthcare, right? I know historically we've talked about technology adoption and how healthcare has this reputation of being a bit of a laggard in this space for any number of reasons related to just what we do in healthcare related to treatment and other kind of sensitive decisions we have to make. It's going to be the same with AI. This is one of those spaces where, compared to some of the other technologies that we cover in our digital health research, this is one that continues to garner ongoing investment and interest from our health system clients. There's still those challenges related to, say, the difference between being involved in AI as far as just piloting a bunch of stuff that ultimately may not actually be put to full deployment or scale. The persistent effort to experiment and explore with AI solutions, we are still seeing that after however many years now since the ChatGPT craze really kicked off. That is a positive signal, but we still also need to be mindful of some of the differences between larger health systems, highly resourced systems that have the luxury or ability to deploy more solutions at one point in time versus other institutions that are still feeling so constrained that they're having to really place their bets in maybe one or two select possible areas of using AI. And so trying to kind of level that playing field a little bit is going to be something we're going to keep an eye on.
What's the goal now for most companies that are buying an AI solution? And is that going to be the same goal a few years from now? And what I'm trying to tease out is the end game here just workforce reduction? And is it going to be pretty different across industries, or what are we seeing so far?
We're still in the stage of experimentation and pilot. And it's not just with the technology and these solutions at the enterprise or at companies, it's as a society. We still haven't wrapped our head around exactly how to layer in intelligence into our tools. We're used to being the only intelligence layer in the chain of production. And now that there's a new intelligence layer that's being built into our tech stack, we don't understand the best way to do that. OpenAI saying that they're now seeing themselves as more of a product company. Like there's a reason for that because they were a research lab. A lot of these are labs. They're experimenting. I was talking to someone at OpenAI and they were saying it's really difficult to be working on the go-to-market side because everything that you get is just research from a bunch of data scientists that have created this awesome new technology. And they say, here, take it to the masses and make it usable. And so it's not being built like normal software and normal tools where we say, this is the job that I have to be done. I need to build a tool to take care of this job. So when you talk about trying to tease out, is this going to replace people? Is the end game workforce reduction? It is. It's just way too early. And I think all of the forecasts were so overemphasized that aspect of it because the distribution of intelligence does not translate to capabilities. There's all of these different things that are just hard engineering problems to bolt on top of this intelligence to make it truly functional.
Sam, the phrase of the day or the application of the day is agentic AI. I'm hearing about it a lot. And for the listeners who might not know as much about it, we are essentially looking at the possibility of AI that is a new evolution of what you might have thought of as a chatbot that's far more autonomous in its ability to initiate action and moreover take over an end-to-end process. It can still defer to a human where it's appropriate, but more or less, we could start to offload full functions to an agent. And now we're talking about systems of agents and multi-layers of specialty agents that could start to take over to a concept of, I read a future report around the concept of a fully functioning organization that could essentially be a team of agents. That's the kind of talk that puts red flags up for people. I'm curious just your take on the equation of AI replacing workers. Nobody's going to openly admit to that or say that, but how does that match up with the focus around agentic workforces that are starting to scale up right now?
There's a lot to be seen with these agentic workforces. A lot of promise and the delivery on that has been muted, but it's going to take a while to get there. It was Sam Altman that said, we know the path to AGI and it's fundamentally an engineering problem. In the state of enterprise AI, it is wild to me because the capabilities of this technology far outpaces the enterprise's ability to adapt to it within its system.
And I bet it's outpacing enterprise's ability to govern it. I wonder what external rules there are. I don't know the answer to this, so guide me. Is it legal for a system to have an AI agent that's doctor or nurse Sam Fredin's voice calling to do follow-up with a patient who was discharged from the hospital today? And when the patient picks up the phone, it says, "Hi, this is Dr. Fredin. How are you doing?" Is that legal?
No, I don't think so. Not a legal expert, but as of today, at least to my knowledge, anything purely AI generated is not under copyright protection and does not have legal protection at all. I would imagine that it's just the responsibility of whatever organization let that loose. They're responsible for whatever comes out. It's not the model provider or the SaaS company. It's really complicated, especially the way that we work with AI becomes a co-creative act and not just built this machine learning algorithm that's completely deterministic of you input A and B and then you get C. Today, it's like I input A and I input 5 sprinkles and I output 3 unicorns and then I turn that unicorn herd into like a video game. And it's this whole workflow that's end to end. All the deliverables are changing. At what point did the AI create something versus me create something? The purely AI generated stuff is a lot easier to say who's responsible for this or is this legal or is it not? The complicated piece is when I'm leveraging AI and introducing by nature opaque reasoning layer into my workflow, where's my responsibility start and end? We as humans bear the responsibility. That's my personal opinion. And so whatever output you put into the world or whatever agent you build, you are responsible for its output. Our legal system, I don't think, has an opinion on that yet, unless you've seen something different, Andrew.
In any case where a patient is potentially interacting with some form of AI, there's going to need that disclosure up front that this is essentially an AI agent or some other system that they're engaging with. In the case of, say, they get an automated call and they have to go through a process, there will always also be an escalation path to a human. I would expect that to remain a core function for the long term. I don't think that we're going to be putting ourselves in any good position where we start to use AI and hope that patients don't question it or think beyond, is this a human being? That's where you start to get into really risky territory.
Sam, I've heard you talk about some survey data and external data from the employee's perspective of how they're working with AI. And this, again, goes beyond healthcare. Do you mind sharing some of that and thinking about what it means and connect some of those dots? Because we've mostly talked from the company's or employer perspective.
The first is that there's an AI vendor called Writer. They deploy AI to the enterprise, and they did a survey late 2024 of a bunch of CEOs and enterprise employees. They found the state of enterprise AI survey. 31% of corporations' employees are actively sabotaging their generative AI efforts. Not just passive, actively sabotaging. A third of the workforce is saying, we don't want this, and we don't want this to the point that we're going to work against the company. Why is that? Leaders and CEOs need to get smart on this. We're lucky enough at Vizient to have those leaders to be able to say, we're going to use AI, and you have to use AI. It's a thoughtful and informed deployment of that. In our pilot, we had 1,000 employees as part of this pilot in early 2024. We have human-centered AI strategy. That's our word salad of how we deploy AI here at Vizient. But it's how do we meet people where they're at and teach them relevant skills to have AI actually help their day-to-day? What are 5 to 7 useful instances where you could use ChatGPT to make your life easier, or any AI tool? We need to acquire a good tool that's secure and safe. We need to figure out what those use cases are, and we need to figure out what best practice is. And then we need to teach that to people. So we had everyone kind of break out into persona groups, and then we had these dojos set up, and these dojos were like 15 to 20 people. It was just space for people to learn from an expert that actually knew their day to day and learn those 5 to 7 use cases. And all that netted out to, we did a survey at the end of the summer of these 1,000 employees. First of all, our survey response rate was crazy compared to benchmarks. I think it was like 70% survey response rate. So we feel really confident in the data that we got. But it was 80% of our employees that were part of this pilot said that generative AI tools had a net positive impact on their daily job. A lot of the feedback was people feeling empowered, the creativity and the collaboration that comes with this too, where you actually have something that's willing to iterate with you and you can take things to the next mile and you lead with your expertise. And this can just empower so many different other things and new learnings and new capabilities. But then it also forced people to rethink how they do their job.
Andrew, everything I've heard from Sam today has not been trying to make the financial ROI case that I hear health systems trying to make, but they are all pointing to the same net benefit, mostly on provider satisfaction. I see a huge link here and a shift in how any large employer, including a health system, is probably going to have to think about AI as this is a cost. The ROI is in some ways going to be intangible, but it may just be table stakes expectation. And it is going to have a net positive, potentially pretty big impact on employee satisfaction, something that's been incredibly stubborn and that every system, every group, every hospital would say they've worked really hard on in recent years. That's a shift. I think it's a positive. Is it the same thing you're hearing? Do you hear systems already making that shift, or are they learning it in real time?
There's a lot of intangibles that are going to come with this, especially early on with how we explore AI use. Part of that challenge with healthcare is that not every health system is necessarily deploying that enterprise license to a big swath of their staff early on, the way that we did within Vizient to allow for that exploration. if you do that kind of crowdsourcing, there's a lot of things that come up organically that maybe you weren't anticipating when you set out your primary metrics of value of what you thought AI was going to do for your organization as far as boosting, say, productivity in some aspect of the business or hitting the bottom line very clearly in a set period of time. Those are really difficult things to set up. And I was just in a room a couple of days ago with a network of CFOs, and it was just the question that came up pretty consistently. How do we think about return on investment? How do we think about essentially funding for these different AI initiatives and all of the different types of models that exist out there? It is still certainly early days. Speaking back to Sam's approach as Vizient built out this different list of personas, I mean, I sit in the research seat. I cover digital health for SG2, and I think about my personal payoff and use of this technology. And I think when you're a researcher and your job is to publish, the most daunting thing is sitting in front of a blank slate and trying to think, what's the next thing I'm going to cover? What's the best way to present this? And what's the channel to distribute it? Having access to something like an AI co-pilot or whatever you want to call it to even just simply brainstorm just to get a launch pad for me to go deeper. I have so many periods of writer's block that now I have something that can get me moving a bit faster than I probably would have without it. And that includes to kind of kickstart a brainstorm, but to take what I ultimately produce and continue to tweak it and refine it and get it to where it's ready for something that I probably wouldn't have done as quickly on my own. And so, I mean, that's ultimately what we're getting at. That's just one little small picture there where that process, you're probably not going to see it on SG2's financial bottom line, but you're going to see it as far as the product that's ultimately out there that hopefully helps our members, but also made my life easier as an employee and makes me think I can keep working at this and enjoying the job that I do because now I'm not getting hung up on these periods of just a writer's block where I don't know where to begin.
Guys, thank you both so much for sharing your insight, your perspective, where you think we are today, where you think we're going. It's an exciting space, and I look forward to talking with you both about this very soon.
Thanks, Trevor.
Thanks, Trevor.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review us, and or follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn at SG2 Healthcare. And if you want to talk more about innovative healthcare strategies, you can always email me at sg2perspectives@sg2.com. Finally, SG2 is a Vizient company, and there are a bunch of Vizient podcasts that you might like. You could find them at Vizient /podcasts. Have a great day.